Tom Cruise has finally broken his silence on Nicole Kidman's shocking divorce from Keith Urban, and the internet can't decide what's more chilling, what he said or what he didn't. After 24 years of refusing to speak her name in public, Tom's words have resurfaced like a ghost from the past. And in those words, a quiet warning. I saw this coming. It's the line nobody expected, not because it's dramatic, but because it's terrifyingly calm. Like a man who's been watching the same story unfold all over again, certain that history was bound to repeat itself. Nicole's world is unraveling. 19 years of marriage gone in an instant. And while she's been holding back tears and headlines are exploding, Tom Cruise has kept his signature silence until now. The timing? Almost too perfect. The meaning? That's where things get dark. Because this isn't just a man commenting on his ex-wife's heartbreak. It's a man who's been waiting 2 decades to prove he was right. But before we unpack what Tom actually meant when he said, I saw this coming, make sure you tap that subscribe button. We're pushing hard for 1,000 subs, and your support helps keep these deep dive stories coming. Now, let's break down the chain reaction that set Hollywood on fire. When news broke that Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban were officially splitting, Hollywood didn't just react, it erupted. Tabloids flooded with speculation, fans flooded her socials with heartbreak emojis, and insiders whispered that this wasn't just a sudden breakup, it was something that had been building for years. Publicly, Nicole tried to keep her usual grace, smiling through interviews, posting cryptic quotes about healing and letting go. But behind the scenes, those close to her say she was devastated. Keith's alleged late-night outings, long absences from home, and emotional distance had pushed their marriage past a point of no return. And while the world focused on her pain, Tom Cruise was watching quietly from a distance. The same man who once shared her spotlight, her fame, and ultimately her downfall. What nobody realized at the time was that Nicole's divorce might have reopened wounds that Tom had buried decades ago. When Tom Cruise finally spoke, it wasn't during an interview, a press conference, or some dramatic statement. It was offhand, quiet, like a thought that slipped through the cracks. A journalist mentioned Nicole's name, and for the first time in years, Tom didn't dodge. Instead, he paused, smiled, and said, I saw this coming. That single sentence spread like wildfire. Within hours, social media turned it into a storm, fans debating whether it was cold, calculated, or heartbreakingly honest. Some said it was classic Tom Cruise, confident, detached, and strangely prophetic. Others saw it as a rare glimpse of a man still haunted by what could have been. Clips of the moment hit TikTok, racking up millions of views in hours. Comment sections filled with theories, some claiming Tom was still in love with Nicole, others insisting it was his quiet revenge after years of being portrayed as the villain in their split. But the truth behind that line runs deeper than gossip, because for Tom, this wasn't just a reaction, it was a reflection. Tom and Nicole's story has always been more than a Hollywood romance. It was a collision of power, belief, and fame that defined an entire era. When they met on the set of Days of Thunder in 1989, they were unstoppable, the golden couple everyone envied. But behind that picture-perfect image, cracks were already forming. Friends later revealed that their marriage became a battle of control, with Tom's deep involvement in Scientology clashing against Nicole's growing desire for independence. By the time their divorce hit in 2001, Tom had become the face of the church, while Nicole was quietly trying to distance herself from it. That tension never truly faded. Even years later, she avoided questions about him, and he avoided saying her name. But after Nicole's divorce from Keith Urban, those old wounds reopened, and Tom's comment, I saw this coming, suddenly sounded like more than just coincidence. It was almost as if Tom wasn't talking about Keith, he was talking about Nicole and the cycle she could never escape.
At first, the public sided with Nicole, painting her as the heartbroken victim, betrayed once again by another man in Hollywood. But as Tom's quote began circulating, the narrative started to shift. Old interviews resurfaced, moments where Nicole had thrown subtle shade at Tom, laughing about their strange marriage, calling him controlling or intense. Now, people were asking, was Tom right all along? Comment sections became battlegrounds. Some fans accused Nicole of hypocrisy, claiming she'd built a reputation off of moving on while still taking digs at her ex. Others defended her fiercely, saying Tom was just trying to stay relevant off her pain. But the timing of his words was too perfect to ignore. As one viral tweet put it, Tom didn't need revenge. He waited for time to do it for him. And that's when everything flipped, because suddenly the story wasn't about Nicole's heartbreak anymore. It was about Tom's quiet vindication.
Hollywood wasted no time weighing in. Celebrities, insiders, and talk show hosts all had something to say, and not all of it was kind. Some close to Nicole called Tom's comment heartless, while others claimed it was eerily calculated, like he'd been waiting for this moment. But behind closed doors, a few insiders admitted something darker, that Tom's words carried an uncomfortable truth. Those who knew both of them said Nicole's marriage to Keith Urban had eerily mirrored her time with Tom. The fast rise, the emotional distance, the pressure of fame slowly eating away at the connection. Entertainment journalists couldn't resist the parallels. Headlines read, "History repeats for Nicole Kidman," and "Tom Cruise predicted it all." Even late-night hosts joked that Tom had turned prophecy into PR. Still, no one could deny the power shift. After decades of silence, Tom had flipped the narrative in a single sentence. He didn't need a statement or a scandal, just 7 words that reminded Hollywood who he really was.
When Tom said, "I saw this coming," most people took it as a jab, a subtle dig at Nicole's failed marriage. But those who know Tom best say it wasn't about revenge, it was about pattern. Over the years, Tom has been quietly vocal about how fame, ego, and emotional distance destroy relationships in Hollywood. Insiders claim he's obsessed with the idea of cycles, how people repeat the same mistakes until they finally face the truth. And for him, Nicole's story was proof of that theory. Some even believed Tom was referencing the emotional loop that tore them apart, the push and pull between love and control, faith and freedom. The same forces that ended their marriage may have been the same ones that ended hers with Keith. So when Tom said, "I saw this coming," he wasn't just talking about a breakup. He was talking about history repeating itself, both in Nicole's life and his own. It wasn't arrogance, it was a confession, a quiet acknowledgement that some endings never really end.
Since Tom's comment went viral, Nicole has remained completely silent. No interviews, no statements, not even a social media post. And that silence has only fueled the fire. Every day she stays quiet, the narrative shifts further in Tom's favor. Meanwhile, Tom's public image has undergone a strange transformation. For years, he was the outsider, the intense, controlling figure people loved to dissect. But now, after a single offhand remark, fans are calling him predictive, wise, even mature. His silence for all those years suddenly looks less like pride and more like restraint. It's almost as if Tom finally got the last word without ever raising his voice. Nicole's heartbreak became his unspoken redemption arc, not because he gloated, but because he waited. In Hollywood, patience is rare, but Tom Cruise just proved that sometimes silence speaks louder than scandal. 2 decades later, it feels like Tom Cruise has finally closed a chapter that's haunted him for half his career. Not through revenge, not through a movie role, but through time, patience, and 7 simple words that reminded everyone that silence can be its own form of power. Nicole Kidman's divorce may have reignited old pain, but it also reshaped the legacy of one of Hollywood's most complicated relationships. What began as a love story became a lesson about fame, control, and what happens when two people are too powerful to share the same spotlight. Whether you see Tom's words as cold or calculated, one thing certain: he saw something the rest of the world didn't. And now that he's finally spoken, it feels less like a headline and more like the final act of a story that was never really finished. Some stories end quietly, and some echo forever. If you made it this far, thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button as we push toward our 1,000 subscriber goal. There's a lot more Hollywood truth to uncover, and trust me, the next story might shock you even more.